Welcome to worship for the Unitarian Universalist community of Charlotte. My name is Jay Leach. I'm one of the ministers. You've heard already from my dear colleague, John Herrick, who is our director of music. While walking the streets in protest one night this past week, a man came alongside and in a pronounced French accent began talking to me. He outed himself as a journalist from a newspaper in Montreal, come to investigate our particular expressions of the social upheaval that is transpiring throughout our nation. He asked what I did and what brought me out into the streets. After responding that I was a Unitarian Universalist minister, he admitted that he was unfamiliar with our ways of being a religious community. I explained to my journalist interlocutor, Eve, that ours is a religion of the here and now. We believe that there should be no separation, that there can be no separation between our most deeply held spiritual values and our actions and commitments. I'm out here because the cries of no justice, no peace, and Black Lives Matter, and hands up, don't shoot, are profound affirmations of my faith. Even I walked along and talked, a Roman Catholic journalist and a Unitarian Universalist minister, in the midst of a beautiful community of people full of broken hearts and broken dreams and broken promises. We gather in that spirit on this day. We gather drawing no line between our spiritual community and the larger community of these activists and organizers and angry, hurting people. We gather to set what we are experiencing in the context of what we each and what we all hold most dear. I'm aware that we may have those of you who have come here looking for spiritual solace in the midst of this crisis. Welcome, especially if you are not typically part of us. Welcome to those of you who make this community and my ministry possible. My deepest thanks to you. We gather to kindle from our separate fires one flame. As you are hearing the music and seeing the lyrics of this song, you're invited to go to our public Facebook page and post greetings of welcome and today of support to one another. Welcome.
For the Hagen family, I'm Lisa, and this is
Lily. Hi. On behalf of our community, we light our chalice today as if it were for all of us. In days made dark by despair, may its light guide our steps.
in times of sickness and loss, while the foundations shake with rage and outrage, may its fire be for us a beacon, pointing us to transformation and to justice.
'13th century Islamic Sufi mystic Jalaluddin Muhammad Rumi invites internal spaciousness. He commends a kind of hollowing out, becoming like a ney, a reed flute. Then the divine may blow through us, creating those wailful notes that will express longing for union with love itself. 6 centuries later, Nobel Prize winning Bengali poet Rabindranath Tagore imagines himself as this little flute of a reed. Through me, he says, divine breath blows, melodies eternally new. These metaphoric, poetic ways of imagining humans as flutes are rooted in deep, ancient, primitive religious mythology about life and about the creation of human life itself. An Egyptian tale of Isis blowing breath into 2 human figures. The Yoruba account of Obatala creating figurines from wet clay into which Olorun breathes life. An Iroquois myth of Earth Woman, daughter of a goddess, into whom the wind blew, impregnating her with twins. That Chinese creation story of Nu Kwa, mother goddess, using wet clay from the Yellow River to mold humans by hand, then infusing them with the breath of life, some with the essence of yin, others with yang. A Maori tale of Tane, who creates the first woman out of red clay and then blows the breath of life into this earth maiden. And the Hebrew myth of Genesis, of Yahweh Elohim fashioning Adam out of clay, then blowing into his nostrils the breath of life, turning Adam into a living soul. Why in so many divergent places and peoples and culture does a very similar creation account arise? It seems to be rooted in primitive experiences, not of life, but of death, of encountering immobile, unresponsive bodies as devoid of breath. Is it any wonder then that they concluded that it must be breath that gives us life, since its absence signals death? In these stories, it's not just that breath is equated with life, Breath is regarded as a divine gift, transmitted into some human form by some divine, who animates that form through the transmission of breath. After all, they knew we can't create breath. We can't fashion breath out of the raw materials available to us. It may be within us, but it comes from beyond us, breathed into all human bodies, each its own sort of flute, into which some divine flautist plays. Breath is life. Breath is divine. So say our Aboriginal forebears. Now, of course, we live our lives at a very great distance from them. Their worldviews are obviously not ours. And yet, in planning memorial services for those we have loved and lost, no song is more requested than one appearing early on in our gray hymnals. Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. For all we know and all we now understand, we yet sing. Sing as grateful recipients of the ongoing gift of breath. We offer our embodied affirmation, our yes to life itself.
When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
When I breathe in,
I breathe in peace.
when I breathe out,
I breathe out love.
when I breathe in,
I breathe in peace.
when I breathe out,
I breathe out love.
when I breathe in,
I breathe in peace.
when I breathe out,
When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
when I breathe in,
I breathe in peace.
when I breathe out,
When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
Spirituality, from spiritus, is literally about breathing. Spiritus, the Latin word meaning breath. Is it any wonder that so many forms of spirituality entail some way of breathing with intention? Breathing in instructs Vietnamese Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, I calm myself. Breathing out, I feel at ease. Breathing in, I smile. Breathing out, I release. Breathing in, I dwell in the present moment. Breathing out, I know it to be a wonderful moment. Spirituality, from spiritus, is literally about breathing. Those of you who practice or teach yoga know that true, deep spiritual practice of yoga is rooted in breathing with intention. Those of you devoted to the spiritual practice of meditation know that awareness of attention to focus on breathing is so very often the pathway into the depths of that practice. Those of you for whom physical exercise is a form of spiritual practice know that how you breathe, your capacity to breathe in aerobic exercise, makes all the difference. Those of you who participate in our services know that often when we come to that time we call meditation and aspiration, we begin by inviting a different, a deeper way of breathing. Spirituality, from spiritus, is literally about breathing. Is there a more obvious example of what we call the interdependent web of all existence than in the act of breathing? Something so basic, so utterly essential, and yet none of us is able to meet our own need in isolation. For all of our scientific knowledge, for all of our technological acumen, we still can't create breath. We still can't fashion breath out of the raw materials available to us. Each of us, no matter how powerful or privileged, is utterly dependent on that essential exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Each of us is but a part of that interdependent web of all existence, taking into ourselves breath made possible by something other than ourselves. Spirituality, from spiritus, is literally about breathing. Spirit, which is to say, breath of life. Come unto me. Blow in the wind.
A Small Needful Fact by Ross Gay is that Eric Gardner worked for some time for the Parks and Rec Horticultural Department, which means, perhaps, that with his very large hands, perhaps, in all likelihood, he put gently into the earth some plants, which, most likely, some of them, in all likelihood, continue to grow, continue to do what such plants do, like house and feed small and necessary creatures, like being pleasant to touch and smell, like converting sunlight into food, like making it easier for us to breathe.
Breath is a gift. Breath is sacred. Spirituality from spiritus is literally about breathing. So, when our economic system, in its weakened and wavering state, insists on using undercompensated, often unprotected, essential workers to keep it and us from complete collapse. And when our system requires so many of them to work despite a rampaging virus, one that is transmitted by breathing, and once contracted attacks the lungs, it is a spiritual indictment on our economic system. Economic injustice is a spiritual crisis, especially when it imperils something so basic as someone else's capacity to breathe. Breath is a gift. Breath is sacred. Spirituality from spiritus is literally about breathing. So, when we sent nurses, doctors, aides, technicians, and the unseen and unappreciated support staff into a healthcare system unable to provide them with appropriate protection, sent them in some of our cities as our sacrificial lambs, knowing that the simple act of breathing would foster great peril for some of them. It was a spiritual indictment of our healthcare system. Glancing across the street at our nurse neighbor one Saturday afternoon back in early April, I saw her hanging out her masks to dry. She had used them the prior night, brought them home to wash, was trying to get them dry because she would need them again that night, lest breathing prove fatal to her or to others. The failure to provide adequate health care for all within an adequate health care system for all is a spiritual crisis. Breath is a gift. Breath is sacred. Spirituality from spiritus is literally about breathing. So, when a man with dignity and worth, a man born and nurtured in Houston's 3rd Ward, where I spent a decade, when that man is apprehended, thrown into the street in broad daylight before the gaze of bystanders and their cameras, then weighted with the bodies of 3 police officers, one of whom calmly places a knee on his neck. And when these officers, representatives of an irreparably broken system rooted in our nation's long history of white supremacy, when these officers and one more looking on can completely ignore his cries. Please, please, I can't breathe. Please, man, please, somebody, please, man, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Please. And when his calls, Mama, Mama, and his cries soften. Please. I can't breathe, officer. Don't kill me. They're gonna kill me, man. Come on, man. I cannot breathe. I cannot breathe. They're gonna kill me. They're gonna kill me. I can't breathe. Please, sir. Please. 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 I can't. And when he falls silent, still, and as we now know, pulseless, these brutes can continue to perch atop his lifeless body. It is only the latest in a long lineage of spiritual indictments against police brutality. And when, in the aftermath of this murder, they will file a report full of breathtaking lies and fill an autopsy report full of lies that make us gasp. And when, in the midst of profound social unrest fostered by this shameless murder, an attorney general and president collude to imperil the breathing of peaceful protesters so they can stage an act of shameless sacrilege. And when the chief of police in our own city sanctions an ambush on peaceful protesters to engage in chemical warfare, restricting the breathing of those people while heightening their susceptibility to a deadly virus. And when our elected officials need yet one more investigation, one more study to determine whether there is some justification for the kind of chemical warfare in our streets that leaves its victims gasping for breath. All of this is a spiritual indictment against an irrevocably broken system of policing. We are in a moment of spiritual crisis. As a city, a state, and a nation. A spiritual crisis of breathtaking proportions. We are sad and angry and worried and outraged today. Our hearts are heavy, our minds are disturbed, our souls are so weighted down that we feel a constricting tightness in our chests. Breath is a gift. Breath is sacred. Spirituality from spiritus is literally about breathing. I remember learning as a kid, growing up in South Carolina, that our state motto was Dum Spero Spiro. Dum Spero Spiro. While I breathe, I hope. Today, let us take a deep breath while we can, if we can. As those committed to societal and spiritual transformation, and who recognize exactly how intertwined those two things are. Let us imagine with faith that upheaval could portend new possibilities, the shaking of the foundations of our systems, the call for a defunding of a system of domination, so that we can invest in systems in which all may, for the first time, breathe breaths of real freedom. These may be signs of hope. These very dark hours may be signaling to us that soon the dawn will break. So let us not live as those who have no hope. Let us instead ground ourselves deeply in our spiritual practices. Let us create a kind of intentional space, spaciousness, an opening through which the very spirit of life may move. For as long as we have breath, there are yet those opportunities to which we must now say yes. 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 As some of you will recognize, I have moved now out into our memorial garden. I do so for two reasons on this day. First, to invoke the memory and the spirit of our minister emeritus of blessed memory, Sidney Freeman, who led in this congregation and in the larger community in earlier days of spiritual crisis. We invoke the witness of Sidney Freeman into these fraught times. I move also out into this setting amidst the noise of the surrounding streets, of the life of this community, to breathe a prayer on behalf of all of us that need not be contained within our walls, to speak this prayer out into our community on this day. I invite you to join me in a time of meditation and even in these times of aspiration, the opportunity to breathe deeply together. I invite you to settle into where you are and to close your eyes. Spirit of life, sacred wind, divine breath, breathe on this day, in this moment, into hearts heavy with grief. Send some assuaging breath that might solace and comfort, hold and care. Breathe on this day into hearts filled with rage. Send some igniting breath that would not quell, but rather channel such anger into change. Breathe on this day into hearts filled with confusion. Send some breath of clarity, of purpose, of inspiration. Order our paths in your ways. Breathe on this day, in this moment, into hearts that are hardened with hubris. Disturb, upend, disrupt. Send such force as would shake them to their very cores. Cast down the mighty from their power. Lift up the oppressed into new power. Be for us now the renewing breath of transformation. May old things pass away. May new things come into being. Spirit, breath of life, this is our prayer today, in this moment. Amen. Thank you to those who continue to support us through your prayers, your encouragement, your messages of appreciation. They mean more to us than we can say. Thank you also to those of you who continue to provide generous financial support to our congregation in this time, making possible our ministries individually and collectively. Thank you for those of you who are aware with no baskets to pass during these services, that you are finding other channels to offer additional financial support to us. We are immensely grateful for your generosity. Thank you. Welcome again to each of you, and thank you for being a part of our virtual service on this Sunday or whenever you are streaming this service. Welcome especially to those of you who are our guests who are not accustomed to being a part of us, whether virtually or in person. If you'd like to find out more about our congregation, our membership coordinator, Kelly Green, would love to have a conversation with you. You can contact her through email at Kelly, Kelly, at UUCCharlotte.org. We are a community that not only streams these services, but continues to offer an array of programming for children, youth, and adults. If you would like to find out more about the life of this community, I commend our electronic newsletter to you. It's called Currents, and you can find that on our website at www.uuccharlotte.org. Currents on our website. For members, I remind you that today is the occasion of our abbreviated annual meeting. You've received information about that. I hope that you will be in attendance as we make the decisions that will keep us operational in these challenging times. We are aware always that we exist in part to hold the members of this community with love, to celebrate happy occasions, to hold one another in sorrow and grief, to be present to one another as we carry the heavy burdens of these times. My heart goes out to each of you as you find your way through your days in a time for which we have no roadmaps. Our collective hearts go out together on this day to Mick Elvenstar, who holds in concern the health of his beloved brother, and to Ann Doss Helms and Carrie Helms, as they today are weighted with concern for Ann's brother. We know that there are those of you who over these past few months have lost beloved loved ones, whether to the virus or in other ways. And we continue to hold you with love and in our prayers. We hold with thanks, with gratitude, with respect, the organizers and activists who are leading our community once again to rise up, once again to call out the abuses of power. We hold with admiration those who are leading us peacefully, with courage, with provocation. We are grateful for them. And today we open wide our hearts and hold them in prayer for wisdom and for courage in the living of these days. Thank you again for being a part of this experience. Thank you for your ongoing support of our community. And now, may we know yet again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and in miracle to each other, to this community, and to the universe. Go in courage. Go in courage into this week.